Hello and welcome to the Indian Dream podcast, co hosted by Sahil and Siddharth. On this show, we highlight the journeys of successful SME entrepreneurs who've built profitable businesses and attempt to learn more about what it takes to build one. Each week, Sahil and I will interview one such entrepreneur and learn something unique from their journey. In the last episode, we heard Vedanta's take on how the trading businesses should operate in this modern era. This episode, we dig deeper into his hiring practices and understand how he's been able to build a super efficient team with an average age of 30, comprising of people not from the paper industry. Listen in to understand a little bit more about his unique hiring practices. Whatever you're saying makes complete sense and you believe it in and you act accordingly, right? How do you now scale this culture or this thought process, this way of working within the organization? Are you hiring a certain kind of people? Are you putting some systems and checks and balances in place? Are you building some sort of SOP platform where this kind of consulting is to be provided, these kind of value added services is to be provided? Because a lot of times what people face as challenges in small businesses when you're starting out is, while you believe in a lot of those things, you have to now find people who can scale that for you, because your time is limited, it's a finite resource, right?
Yeah, so basically, what we do at both Coniferous and Analytica is we only hire people who are around my age. I think we are one of the youngest companies in the industry as well. So I think our average, like you could say, a mean working age in our company is around 30 years of age, who actually run this entire division. So we have a lot of young people involved. And whenever a colleague comes up to me with a problem, I just ask him to start thinking on the logic behind it. Because suppose you get the logic behind, then you start thinking a little bit more logical. So I'm not saying don't think by your heart, but I'm saying you should understand the logic. Once my colleagues started understanding that thought form that you should have logic involved in everything that you ask or everything that you say for, then they started thinking along the same lines. I think a lot of the times what I've noticed in other SMEs is people just tell their colleagues to you need to do this work or you need to get this work done. They never tell them why they're asking them to get that work done. So unless you constant and they don't appreciate questions. I mean, I've seen my superiors, they never appreciate questions from their colleagues. I like if my colleagues question me. I mean, a lot of the times I've given away discounts to a lot of customers, and my colleagues have actually come up to me and said, "Why have you given a discount? You shouldn't have given a discount. We would have fared well even without giving a discount." And I had to actually explain why I actually gave it to them, and then they started understanding the rationale behind, and they started implementing that ahead. And again, I believe you should bring about transparency even within your colleagues. So a lot of my colleagues know pretty much everything that we do. They know our purchasing part, they know our selling part, they know the challenges we face internally. So when your employee or your colleague or your teammate knows that, then they get a better picture on how to carry on the business independently. I mean, I don't interfere in anyone's business. So we have about 15 team members as on date, but I don't interfere in anyone's business.
Is it fair to say that when you started out, the mean age was actually fairly close to 25? Was it that young?
It was about 26, 27.
Okay, that's I think that's something that a lot of young entrepreneurs will have to figure out is bank on young talent, because if you get people from the industry who have like 7, 10, 12 years of the industry, they're going to think like the industry thinks. Then you're not going to be able to make them think in a new or a different way, because they're going to be they're going to be primed to think that way. And I think that's crucial when you're starting something new, even though it might be something that's been done for ages.
So one thing that I would actually like to tell everyone that's listening is never hire from the industry. Never ever hire from the industry. It never works. And if suppose someone's leaving a job from the industry and he's joining you, you can be rest assured he's going to leave you and join the next guy who's going to give him a 10% raise on his paycheck. So I never hire anyone from the industry.
So even in our company, there are a few product groups that we're trying to enter where obviously it's a closed market. There are only a few players, there are only a few buyers, and there are only a few sellers. And therefore, for us, the thought process was that we need to hire somebody from that industry so that they already have all the contacts. It will fast forward our entire process. And actually, hiring somebody from that industry has been a pain. We've been struggling at it for the last, I don't know, 10 months. We are also now after having burnt our fingers, we are going with your thought process that we're going to start building the team from the ground up, hiring young talent, teaching them, and then having them go in the field and do the hard selling, which is obviously a much harder way to do it, and it takes a lot longer. But in the long run, probably is going to bear better fruit than having somebody join, then they leave, then hire somebody else, and then they leave again.
Just to add on,
Yeah.
Sahil, actually, the other benefit about not hiring people from the industry, and if they, so one question I really like asking people before I get them on board is if they actually like the paper industry, if they would actually be interested in selling paper. So I think the recent recruit was from the plastics industry, and he said plastic is not sustainable, and I do not like it, and that's why I want to shift industries. But one thing I can actually tell you that what a plus point you can give an employee when he shifts the industry is that you're giving him a chance to learn again, and you're stimulating his brain, you're stimulating his ability to learn. When you hire someone from the industry, they're pretty much mundane because they've been doing that same thing day in, day out, day in, day out. So they get kind of routinal. They meet the same people. They're doing the same clients. They're doing the same 9 to 5, and the energy is very low. But when you hire someone from outside, you'll see a boost in energy, and you'll see your morale in the company overall will be quite high.
But doesn't the training time on hiring somebody, isn't that so much longer, because they need to learn about the industry, they need to learn about the customers and the suppliers, and takes just so much longer to train them.
It does take much longer, but then imagine this, right? So they're going to be making so many mistakes, and every mistake that they make can either tell you that your SOP wasn't in place or that you have something new to learn. It's just that own bit that will actually pay by itself somewhere downstream for hiring someone outside, because the more you learn about your own industry through people is unfathomable. Like, I never knew tissue is used in the garment industry, for example, like to manufacture garments, and this is what my employees started teaching me, because they made a mistake of offering a price to a trader, and then they asked them what the end application was, and then we found out that after that they asked him what the end application is, and then we found out that he's selling to the garment industry, and that's a whole new industry for us to explore within our own field.
If I unpack that a little more, right, especially selling and marketing sort of roles can be taught very quickly if you have the right sort of systems and processes in place, as you pointed out, Vedant. So is your SOP really working or not? I think that's also a mindset that you go in with, that I'm going to put in the processes and systems in place from day one and keep evolving it. I think the fire balance that you need to maintain probably is, for highly technical roles, you probably still have to go in industry and maybe get a guy or two from the industry who can lend that sort of knowledge to the overall organization. But I completely agree, when it comes to selling and marketing, and especially for a young organization, you can risk and take a bet on people who are not from the industry.
Yeah, Siddharth, but like we're not in a very technical industry. I mean, tissue is fairly simple compared to most industries, so we have never had that difficulty per se. But even if so, I still believe that if you keep looking out for the right people, and if the person has, like, say for example, what I look out for in a salesperson when we interview is that I look out that our sales guys should be good engineers. They should have some kind of engineering background, because I believe in techno commercial sales. So once you have any kind of engineering background, it's a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy or it's hard, but it's a little bit easier compared to someone without a technical background to grasp the technicalities. So suppose you're in coding, for example, maybe you're doing search engine optimization, but you're looking for someone to develop a CRM. Maybe you can look at the search engine optimization guy instead of a guy who's actually developed a CRM in the past, because his thought process in the past would be that it goes from A to B, B to C, C to D. But the search engine optimization guy, the SEO guy, for example, he would say that it can also go from A to D if I just modify the code a bit.
Tell me, how are you finding this talent? Where are you finding this talent? What kind of backgrounds do you potentially look at? I know you said engineering, but India, outside, tell me where you're finding this talent.
So we generally work through HR recruiters. I've tried LinkedIn, I've tried Monster.com, I've tried Indeed, but I've never got, pool is too large to actually segregate them down to. So we normally give the job to an HR recruiter. But till now, everyone I've hired is after interviewing literally about 50 to 60 people. So I interview 50 to 60 people in the first round, and then you keep downward You keep bifurcating it down, and then you get the right person at the end of the day.
Is there a method you have for your interviewing and your screening?
My first is I do a phone interview. So at that time, I just want to understand why he wants to leave his job. The first question that I ask generally is, why are you leaving your job? Why do you want to leave it? If a person says he wants to grow, then my first question is, why can't you grow within the company? Why are you looking to grow externally? If I'm satisfied with that, then I ask them for a second interview where I give them some technical questions from my industry. If they're able to answer that, then it goes to a third. And then if I'm happy when I meet them in person, then I get them in. But a lot of it is if I'm connected with them and if I actually feel that, like sometimes I ask them how would they behave with another team member. So suppose a team member is not being good with the customer, right? So suppose he's being very rude and he's being very agnostic, and you know it that your colleague is not doing a good job. What would you do? So if the interviewee just tells me that he's going to report the colleague to me, then I wouldn't actually bother interviewing him further, because that's not building up a healthy organization. That's just going to be ratting someone out. A better way would be that he actually talks to them, understand why he's being rude towards that particular customer, and see if he can add value, he or she can add value in making things better. So I just give them small interpersonal questions here and there just to understand the mindset where they're coming from.
So to get a cultural fit as well.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, after I interview them, I actually have them speak to different colleagues in different departments within my company. So I actually, and if they can actually come in when I'm not in office, so they don't feel that I'm actually monitoring them. But if they can actually come in and meet different people in the office, and they get a idea of the working culture and everything beforehand, only after that I actually try and get them in.
So this is a lot more detailed recruitment policy than most companies have, because most people, especially from what I've seen, older people, they tend to go by their gut. Have one interview, like, do I like him? Oh yes, hired on the spot. But this seems to be a lot more
Methodical, yeah.
a lot more methodical than going by your gut. And this is something I guess you have also gotten with practice. You must have hired some wrong people, and then yeah.
Yeah. So I've hired people who are much older than me. I couldn't manage them because of the age gap and because of the culture that we come from. So I couldn't ever impose my views on them. Then I've hired people where I haven't checked their backgrounds completely. So I had some legal issues downstream. After understanding everything, I felt this is the best way forth. Because I interview so many people before I select a single person, I don't want that person to cause ill faith in the organization. So each and every post I take about 3 months to fulfill.
Okay, you take your time with filling those posts.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if I'm not satisfied getting someone on board, I just don't want to get them in and have a name badge associated with
Mhm.
it.
And now that you have 15 people, have you been able to go back and sort of figure out a pattern on what kind of people really work out in your organization? Is there, apart from education, is there certain kind that works for you? Have you been able to figure that out?
So mostly people who help one another actually tend to work out. Now, everyone doesn't like to help another person out, no matter how good or bad it sounds. Like sometimes I don't like helping people out. So, but most of the times, people who actually help one another tend to stick around in the organization more. So, if you see our office system currently, say the accountant's sick, right? The main accountant in Dubai is sick. Even a salesperson can actually do. She can't probably enter his stuff in Tally, but she can probably make the invoice or something. So she's willing to get into that job role and do it. So she's willing to cover up so that he doesn't face the brunt of it. So what I've actually seen is as long as you're a team member, you can do well in our organization. But that's the reason why I actually interview so many people and I have a very stringent way of getting people in. Like no HR recruiter likes working with us because we keep asking for so many profiles that they kind of get sick of it.
The way you interview sounds a lot like this book called The A Method of Hiring. I don't know if you've read it.
No, I haven't read that.
But what you've described is basically exactly what that book talks about. Not going by your gut, having a method to how you hire. Vedansh, I've been to your house. I've seen that you read quite a bit, and obviously, I think you're a very thoughtful person in your business, from what I've learned today. Are there any books or blogs or videos or anything that you would recommend to people as a great way to learn?
So off late, I'm just hooked on to Robin Sharma. I told you the same thing actually. So I'm really, really hooked on to his ways and his methods and all of that. He has something called as the 5 a.m. Club. It's a great book to read. It's not just about getting up at 5 a.m., but he actually puts his entire thought process onto why that works and why that on how to build your day so that you achieve personal mastery in each and every section of life. I'm also doing his course online. Apart from that, a lot of the other things that I do kind of build on to Robin Sharma and things of what he preaches.
Both professionally within your company and personally, this applies to both. We're going to take it separately. What is the most important sort of pain point that you haven't gotten to solve yet, but you know that you'll need to sort of solve in the next year or two in your organization and as an individual?
Like you said before, like what is the actual value a trader has? Since we have grown to a certain size, I mean, every year we have been expanding by God's grace, touch wood, biting my tongue, all of that. But I've been, even through the recession, I've told Sahil this before. Every year, even currently, we are growing at least at a pace of 75% on year growth. But that's because the market was so open. But now that we have covered and we're market leaders in most of our markets, I feel there's going to be some stagnation. So we're trying to either look at new products getting forth, or we are trying to see if we can do some kind of a co-branded manufacturing or a lease out manufacturing of sorts, where we don't manufacture, we don't interfere in their business, but we actually do a purchase agreement for at least 50 to 60% of their total production. In another year or two, I think that's something that we're going to be really focused on.
Got it. I think this is also mark of a true salesman, right? Whenever you ask them what's the biggest pain point, they always come up with a new market to open, a new thing to sell, a new product to figure out. I've seen that in a lot of salesmen, who really, people who are really good at selling. Okay, and from a personal perspective, what are you working on? What do you know? What do you sort of, in that personal brand that you've built over the 5 years, which is why you first went out looking out to build that brand, right? You've built a brand of somebody who can set up new businesses, somebody who can grow organization, scale organization. What's next for Vedansh? What are you solving?
Literally, it's something that we're looking at getting into baby products, so something completely different. So we are really looking forth on tapping the baby product industry within India. So I don't want to grow anymore in tissue. I feel I've somewhere I'm matured in my life cycle curve there. So I don't mind innovating within my said markets, but I would like to grow more so in baby products, because I believe there's going to be a massive boom thanks to the pandemic. But I really feel that there's going to be a big demand for baby products, all kinds of baby products. So I feel we're going to be getting into something in that industry, because there's, again, like if you see that industry, there's not a single company that actually offers everything. Like you see Procter and Gamble only doing the baby diapers, or you see Kimberly Clark only doing the baby diapers, and you see Johnson and Johnson with the entire uh, baby care range. So you see them with the baby powder and the baby shampoo, but you'll never see a single company doing everything for a baby. So that's something where I would like to actually tap into, where we do A to Z of what a baby needs. Any industry, if you tap each and every part of the industry, that's where you actually kind of achieve good scale in the long run.
Now that you're entering the baby products industry, how are you going to figure this out? Right? Are you going to figure out who are the players? Are you more comfortable meeting in a business setting? Is that true?
Yeah, more comfortable meeting in a business setting. So for now, we're only doing our research. We're just seeing whether it makes sense for us to enter, whether or not. So we are actually almost on the finishing stages of our research.
Right.
So we've used this slowdown actually to do a lot of research. Apart from that, what I really believe in is unless you actually dive into it, you wouldn't know how it actually works out. So even if it's baby products or whatever, unless I actually get my first container into India and I start actually experimenting with it, no matter what the numbers on paper say, I'll actually never know, because business also has emotion in it.
Literally every single person we have spoken to has said the exact same thing. And
Yeah.
unless you do it, you won't really learn anything. You can research as much as you want, but unless you actually take the first step and do it, that.
Exactly.
So, Vidansh, last thing, is there anything specific that you would like to mention, some organizations or anything that you would like to give a shout out for?
Nothing, just keep using tissue. Tissue is green, paper is green. Don't just keep saying that. I hate the slogan, save a tree and don't print this paper. You actually save a lot more trees and you save the world by not using a lot of technology. Keep using paper. Paper is really green.
So, you know what? Actually, I know that your company is quite digital. So why are you guys not just doing everything on paper, just sending like physical mails to each other?
I really wish I could, but it's just that I'll be losing a lot of orders that way. Like imagine me just sending a customer a letter every time that, so do you want another order from us? And then him replying. So I'll just keep losing orders. I'll go into non-existence. What I meant to say is that the paper industry overall is actually quite sustainable. I mean, people don't see it, but when you send an email, you have so many data centers that actually run on so many fossil fuels. You throw out so many gadgets on them. At the end of their life cycle, all of those gadgets ultimately don't get recycled. They're just heaping up somewhere under the ocean bed or heaping up in some country or under some desert or anywhere. Using paper is something that can constantly get recycled. Even if you don't recycle it, it actually biodegrades. So that's my only take. But you need to have a balance.
Yeah, and from what I understand, also most paper comes from timber farms. It's not natural wood that's been cut.
Yeah, we don't use. Actually, it's illegal in almost about more than 100 countries to use forest wood. So it's all from managed plantations. So the more trees we grow, we're actually taking in that much carbon dioxide, and we give out that much oxygen. Everything that the industry excretes, like in waste, like black liquor or any of the manufacturing process waste that is actually excreted, is all reused to form energy. A lot of paper companies have actually become energy companies rather than paper. Like paper has become their second focus, energy is their primary focus. A lot of biofuels come from the paper industry because it's a byproduct. So the industry is actually pretty green.
Vedant, you mentioned that you're only connected to the people within your industry, right? And just this is just me throwing out an idea, and you'll have to tell me if this is doable or not. Do you think is there a need for something that enables sort of networking or collaboration or sort of thinking together, strategizing together within industries? Would you like to be connected to more people within the industry and exchange ideas, or is that something that's not really a need?
No, I really wish I could. I think that's where I really lag. I don't kind of network, and that's something that's, you could say, a trait in me that I'm really trying to actively work upon.
So, Vedansh, thanks a lot for coming. That was a really interesting discussion. I think I personally took a lot out of it as well. And yeah, thanks for coming. And I hope Coniferous and your new baby line does well.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for having me. It was
Yeah.
nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Siddharth.